with questions which you may or may not have heard before. So good luck.
No. Oh no.
Wow,
Yeah.
Akash is properly prepped.
Double mask situation. Yeah, that's very good.
Cool. All right. So thanks everyone for joining us today. We're really excited. This is our first webinar for Catalyst Labs. And we have an amazing number of guests today joining us for this panel, which is going to be really interesting and going to be talking about supporting entrepreneurs and women leaders. And for this wonderful panel today, we have as a moderator, Rabia Garib. Rabia has been an entrepreneur in technology media since very, very long, since 1999. She established Pakistan's first local technology bi-monthly magazine. She's produced and anchored some of the country's finest tech shows for television and radio. In 2007, she signed with IDG to represent CIO. In 2010, she left the IDG because of reasons, and now she's established Toffee TV with Talia Zafar, an animator and entrepreneur. So we're very thankful, Rabia, for being the moderator for today's session, and I'll hand it over to you. Thanks everyone for joining us today.
Thanks, Akash. Welcome to everyone who has joined in, and I hope that more of our users and visitors will come in. Welcome to this webinar where we're talking about women in technology and women leaders. It's a topic which is obviously very close to all of our hearts, some more than others, simply because we are women. A lot of us have been talking about this and looking at this issue from various perspectives for the past, I think, 20, 25 years that each of us have been within the IT sector in Pakistan. The purpose of today's discussion is to have the four panelists give their perspectives, and let's look at some of the challenges that we are facing and why more and more women aren't just not getting into the technology sector, but also business in general. One of my major concerns, and hopefully a question that I'd like to get an answer to, is why aren't there more women in senior management positions? Why aren't more women opening businesses, and they are right now, but why aren't those businesses being sustained over the long period of time? And also from an investment perspective, because there are a lot of startups who will be joining in, and some who have joined in today. From an investment perspective, how easy is it for women-run businesses to actually pitch for investment, and if that's even needed? So we'll be looking at things from a Pakistan perspective. We'll also be looking at things from a global perspective, because the majority of us do use technology. As COVID has proven to us, you can work from anywhere, anyhow you like, as long as you have the wherewithal and the tools to actually make it all happen. So with me, we've got four panelists. I'll very briefly introduce them to the extent of their names and their organizations. And then I'm going to go to each panelist, and we're going to do just a 30-second quick introduction from each of you. So while I introduce you, you will go ahead and just think of what those 30 seconds in terms of your elevator pitch to introduce yourself to the viewers who are logging in. So I've got Abrar from HBL. Welcome. I've got Dr. Ayesha Khan from the Acumen Fund. Welcome to you. Rabeel Warraich from Sarmayacar. And of course, last but not least, Jehan from Katalyst Labs. And that's a name that I'm really enjoying, putting my kind of sound around it, because it sounds very positive. So Abrar, I'm going to start off with you. Just give you a 30-second intro as to who you are and what the viewer should know about you.
Thank you. My name is Abrar, as you mentioned. I'm the Chief Digital Officer at HBL. So my primary role is to drive the digital and the data strategy for the bank. And also, as a part of that role, a huge element of my responsibility is to drive ecosystem partnerships as we move towards being a more digital organization. And that's where our engagement with Katalyst Lab comes in.
Since he has kind of thrown it over to you, Jehan, let's talk about Katalyst Labs. Everybody knows you. You have a tremendous legacy, which you have as far as establishing the IT industry is concerned. What is Katalyst Labs and how is it different than what you are doing, what you have been doing?
Thanks, Rabia, and thank you, Abrar. So it's different, and yet it's more of the same. So as you know, I've been part of Pasha for the last 20 odd years and started the Nest.io 6.5 years ago, which was a technology incubator. This is the next level in what is needed, I believe, by the ecosystem, which is an accelerator program to help startups, scale their businesses and get to a new level. Also, the Women's Fellowship Program is something that I feel very strongly about, simply because we see the talent all around us, a lot of very accomplished women who just don't seem to get to top leadership roles. And I believe it's extremely important to identify the reasons why and to try and fix it so that we see many more women leading organizations rather than just working in organizations.
Excellent. And we wish you all the very best of luck, you and your team. Can we move on to Aisha, Dr. Ayesha Khan from the Acumen Fund? Just a 30-second intro as to what we need to know about you for this webinar.
Sure, thanks, Rabia. So as you mentioned, I'm the Regional Managing Director for Acumen, which is an impact investment fund. The question that I've been trying to figure out an answer to pretty much all my life is, how do you build success in individuals and in companies? And so that took me through a journey which involved management consulting in New York, a ton of academia, then a stint in the banking sector, and now here at Acumen, hopefully figuring out how do we not only identify successful entrepreneurs and enterprises to invest in, but how do we build them up and grow them in circumstances and contexts that are not often the most supportive? So that's what drives me, and that's what I'm sort of focused on.
Super. I think you were expecting me for that, to ask you to introduce yourself. Yours is, exactly, I think 23 seconds is what I was looking for. But all in all, let's move on to Rabeel Warraich from Sarmayacar. Rabeel.
Thank you, Aisha, first of all, for making my job harder. I don't think you can top that intro, but thank you, Rabia, for passing over. Quickly, Rabeel Warraich, I help run Sarmayacar, which is a Pakistan-focused venture capital fund. Our mandate is essentially backing technology ventures that are at the seed, Series A, maybe now extending to Series B stages, and being bridge builders between more mature ecosystems, which have seen this evolution of the venture capital landscape over years, and maybe try to help bring some of those learnings to the local market. And with that, provide funding together with additional support to help build those businesses that Aisha referred to. And a big fan of all the people around here, because it is an ecosystem, called an ecosystem for a reason. And also just finally to mention, sorry, I might be going over time, we're also the investing partners of the World Bank and the IFC as part of the VFI initiative, which is the Women Entrepreneurs Finance Initiative. So something that we specifically also do as part of our fund in Pakistan.
Thanks, Rabeel. My first question is actually going to get rebounded back to you. I'm going to plant the question for you, give you a moment to think about it, and then make a couple of announcements for the audience. So you talked about the landscape and the ecosystem with specificity to women. What does the landscape in Pakistan or the region even look like? And what should businesses be gearing up for in order to take advantage and pitch, come in front of that potential money? That's the question for you. I'm going to just take a moment and just announce that if you have any questions, please feel free to post them on the Zoom link. We'll be taking questions and also allowing the panelists to respond to it. Go ahead, Rabeel.
Sure. So in my, let's call it kind of like lens, when I look at the ecosystem, and if I was to sum up, I think what we have is a very clear demographic-driven opportunity in Pakistan, which has been in the making for some time. But now a number of the tools that are required by talented people to address or go after certain inefficiencies or market opportunities that exist is now starting to happen. Now, a lot of those tools need to come together from different sources. One of those tools is risk capital, which we've seen actually a tremendous acceleration in over the last few years. So what we were trailing maybe some other ecosystems by a decade or half a decade has been bridged very quickly because the opportunity was always fundamentally there. Other tools that were required were really, frankly, basics like infrastructure, like 3G, 4G. So now we have 100 million smartphones, which people are using for different means. And on that, now additional opportunities, income generation opportunities, and also consumption opportunities are emerging, which are seeing a natural shift in our consumption patterns towards digital sources. And in order to cater towards those, the supply, which is essentially these startups that are emerging, are now kind of like, opting for that as a career path a lot more than what they were before. So we can spend time talking about each one of these limbs, but essentially, if I was to someone like, the capital constraint maybe might have already been addressed or is certainly very much on the way to getting addressed. But the other challenge, which is I think going to be also the crux of the discussion today, which is women entrepreneurs, but more broadly, just talent. I think that's going to start becoming a biting constraint because the acceleration we've seen in the other tools coming together cannot be forced on the talent training and the learning that individuals have to go through the natural evolution of their business cycles and the venture cycle as we know. I'll pause there. Don't want to take it too much off on a tangent, but I think that's where we are. A lot of tools have come together. The regulator is aware and has a genuine intent to try to facilitate. Government and other authorities look good, so they're being helpful to that extent. But some constraints are going to emerge.
All right. I'm going to take the discussion on to you, Aisha. I just want to ask, based on everything that Rabeel has said, how do women entrepreneurs or women startup businesses actually leverage the opportunity of this, this hot investment landscape? So I'm coming to you, Dr. Aisha, and then Jehan and Abrar Saab. I want to talk about kind of what you guys potentially have in terms of a partnership is the realization of what Rabeel has just talked about in terms of putting those tools into effect, realizing those tools and actually having a partnership to create, further acceleration in the ecosystem. So, but I want to get Aisha's take on how to leverage that. And then I'm going to move on to you as how your partnership works. Aisha?
Yeah, thank you for this. And I completely agree with Rabeel that a lot more capital is flowing in. I still think, Rabeel, to what you said earlier, we need more risk-taking capital at the earlier stages. So you're still seeing structures that are more focused on debt-like instruments versus taking equity risk. But I'll put that to the side. And when we focus on female entrepreneurs in particular, this is not something particular to Pakistan, really, but across the world, the amount of venture funding that goes to female founders is in the low single digits. And we've gone back and tried to parse out exactly why this is. If you go back to even, again, the gender of venture funders as well, with a lot of love for Rabeel and a lot of other people we have implicit biases in place. And so when we look at how female founders are questioned, the focus is always on, well, we're taking so much risk on you. Tell us, how is the risk? How is the risk? Whereas when they're talking to male entrepreneurs, the focus is very much on the upside. So there's an implicit bias that we all need to be aware of as investors as well in the market, that we need to really check ourselves. And so figure those pieces out, and the onus of that is on the investors themselves. I think as far as what female entrepreneurs need to do in order to leverage that money and be able to participate in that whole, I wouldn't say there's a ton of capital splashing around, but there's a lot more than that there ever has been in the market. it's really nothing different from what other entrepreneurs need to do. You know, there's a level of preparation that's required in order to pitch properly. There's also nothing magical about being entrepreneurs. There's this like very romantic notion of you are born an entrepreneur and you sit and you get these beautiful ideas. It's being an entrepreneur, and you would know this, Rabia, you've done this. I mean, it's as technical and rigorous a discipline as anything else. There's a training involved in it. There's a process of learning. There's a level of comfort you need to have. And the two most important qualities, and I'd love to also hear what others have to say, but for me, the two most important qualities are, one is having an analytic mindset. So really being able to understand where an entity, where an enterprise is, where it can go, how your cash flows are situated. But along with that, you also need to be a visionary and have great storytelling skills, which is something that moves investors, which is something that will allow you to fundraise. So along with, you know, again, I said two, but there's a bedrock, which I assume this deep integrity. So really polishing those pieces for female entrepreneurs or male entrepreneurs. But I think the onus of ensuring that funding goes to female entrepreneurs, a lot of it is on us as investors to make sure that we leave our biases at the door. You see, someone just recently told me, a colleague, that had sent a team over and they were looking for entrepreneurs to pitch this hot tech startup. And they were greeted by two over middle-aged women, so in their 50s, right? And instantly the team was like, oh my God, this is going like really a hot tech startup run by women in their late 50s. So this is a team that is incredibly sort of open-minded, but they had to stop and check their bias and be like, well, if it was two male entrepreneurs in their 50s, would you instantly be discounting it at that level? Would your questions be around childcare and, you know, how will you manage? So I think the onus is as much, or if like 80% on us, and the rest is up to the entrepreneurs.
What do you think, Jehan? How did you come about starting your startup again?
So Rabia, I think most of what Rabeel and Aisha have said is absolutely correct. You know, we tend to romanticize entrepreneurship and have done so for quite a while. But over time, we have also told entrepreneurs that, listen, this is hard work. Don't think you're your own boss, and so you need to only work 3 hours a day and you can go home when you like, you can party, and that's all there is to it. Actually, it's your own business, and so you work 24 hours a day, 7 days a week if you have to. But that doesn't mean you shouldn't get enough sleep. So there's another sort of myth that, you know, entrepreneurs don't sleep and that's why they're so cool. But the thing is, you also need sleep to be productive. So there are lots of myths that many of us sort of start with because we just want to be so cool. But actually, it's hard work. Starting a business, running it, making sure it gets to where it's going to go, pivoting if we need to, listening to hard criticism when we have to. Yes, dealing with investors, some very understanding, some not so understanding, some sort of putting us in our place and saying, hey, you know, you were never meant to be an entrepreneur. I've heard that as well. You know, all that you've got to take, just like you have to take if you are part of any company and you have a team leader or you have a boss who doesn't understand what you're capable of doing. So you just have to prove it. And in order to prove it, you need to work very hard. You need to understand what you're doing. You need to do your research. So a lot of entrepreneurs, unfortunately, think an idea is it, but it isn't. You know, you do your research. Is there a need for such an idea? Is there a market for such an idea? You know, pricing is something none of them think about. But pricing is also important. Is anybody going to pay for it? If they're going to pay for it, how much are they going to pay for it? How big is the market? Is the local market what you're looking at? Or are you looking at the international market? If you're looking at the international market, do you have what it takes to actually reach that market? Do you want to partner with somebody else? You know, there's so many questions. And it doesn't matter whether you're a man or you're a woman. You just need to think about all those things. And if you don't have all the answers, there are so many people around you who do. And these are people who have started businesses, who have grown businesses, who have failed at businesses. So failure is not something that you should just shrug away. Failure teaches you so much more. So, all these things, reach out to those people, make sure that you learn from them so that you can implement those things in your own business. I think all that is important. And entrepreneurs really need to think about that and not just think, okay, I'm sitting in my room, I've thought of an idea and it's a cool idea. Why doesn't somebody give me $1 million to grow that idea into a business? That's now not how it happens, right? So that's what we did while we were at the Nest.io, was to try and see if we could ground these people, make sure they knew what they were getting into, because it's hard, it's not easy. And now as an accelerator program, the idea is a lot of them actually have proven that they've got a market, they've got customers, they've made some money, but now they need to get to that next level, which is to grow, scale the business, make it hugely successful. And in order to do that, they need to learn more. They need to get into collaborations. They need to get into partnerships. They need to raise some money, perhaps. They need to have a mentor that works with them, perhaps through the scaling of their businesses. They need to get an investor who actually guides them as well as gives them money, right? It's not only about the money. Sometimes it is the guidance and the market that an investor opens for you. I know I've seen Rabeel do that, point people in the direction of, hey, you should be looking at, addressing that market or the other market, and maybe you haven't thought of it. So these are things that one needs an investor or a mentor to guide you. And that's why I think we need to make those connections. We still haven't stopped making those connections. And HBL getting into, this relationship with us at Katalyst Labs is enabling us to do it, because without money, you cannot do any of these things. You can't set up an organization, you cannot hire people, you cannot, train women leaders, you can't have a program. All those things require funding. So you need someone who believes in your mission as much as you do and is willing to bet their money on it. And HBL, fortunately for us, especially, Abrar, when we spoke to him, he understood right away and said, yeah, we're in, because they believe in these things themselves. And I'll let him speak for himself.
Abrar sahab, मैं थोड़ा सा इसका direction set कर दूंगी. So which comes first, the chicken or the egg? A dedication and a call out to Afia also, because she, I think, loves chicken jokes. But which comes first, the chicken or the egg? An entrepreneur like Jehanara, she's got, I think, 25 years of business expertise, business experience, if not more, and she's got a proven track record there also. But a fresh graduate, for example, comes up with an innovative idea, has no money, has no sense of how to get that money. What do you look at, and how do you as an investor, or even Aisha for that matter, how do you as an investor look at this young woman or her and her team and say, this is it? What are you looking for?
So thank you, Rabia. So I think I'll just build on what was just said by Jehanara. So, I mean, where we are as an organization, obviously we're not typically designed to be looking at absolutely raw stuff coming out of nowhere and just trying to start something. That's not what we are geared to look at as an organization or from a risk perspective. And that's when Jehanara reached out to us with this idea. We just jumped for it because in our heart, we strongly believe that there is a huge, huge opportunity in this market to go out and encourage these young entrepreneurs trying to do different things. And at the same time, it's our responsibility as well, being the largest financial institution in this country, to go out and support, help nurture this talent, help nurture these young entrepreneurs who are looking for ways. And to be honest, it's not just a young entrepreneur. I reached out to Jehanara about a day before or 2 days ago, when somebody reached out to me a friend of mine in his early 50s, looking to do a startup, not really knowing how to go about doing fundraising, how to go about forming a company, etc. So I reached out to Jehan and I said, you know what, can you help guide him or whatever else, and help him, sit in front of the right kind of people. So it's not just the starting or the young entrepreneurs, it's an entrepreneur at any stage in their life. They will go through those challenges. They will need to be guided. They will need to be helped. And that's what our fundamental philosophy is. And that's how we look at it, that if we can't do it ourselves, let's partner with people, and who better to partner with than Jehan. So in the form of Jehan, we are taking our very first bet on a woman entrepreneur doing her own startup, and then an entrepreneur who is going out and who is looking to help a lot many other entrepreneurs, both in early stages or especially women entrepreneurs who have been at it for some time, but now they need to go through another round of learning, mentorship, or advisory, or whatever else, to now take their idea to next level. And that's what is really exciting about this partnership.
All right, I've got some questions which I'm going to read out. So whoever wants, just whichever panelist wants can take this. Jamil Janjua JJ asks, what kind of a mindset should the spouse of a woman entrepreneur inculcate to encourage, support, and help her be successful? I will add on the family component to it also, in case she is not married. What does the family or the spouse, what quality should they have? Janara, Aisha, Rabeel, come on.
I think I just want to build on what was said earlier. I think both by Aisha and by Jehan, that Aisha put it that, like, you can't think of it as a constraint, as downside protection, right? Like, what we're, unfortunately, I'm being a male myself, how does the discounting happen? It happens in every aspect of our lives where we think we are slightly better. And again, I know the jokes are going to turn around back on me.
Oh, Rabeel,
when you're driving, if you're on a racetrack and your assumption is, being a male, you're going to finish like faster than a female. That's the same inherent mindset that we're applying when it comes to the potential that can be achieved by a male or female in the country. And unfortunately, that casts a certain self-doubt. And when that self-doubt manifests itself in front of an investor who is looking at that moonshot outcome, that self-doubt, again, perpetuates that same kind of effect, which is leading to, as Aisha pointed out, very few female entrepreneurs getting back. So the first thing that can be done is to just encourage, not just by saying, hey, you should do it, but then doing everything on the back end to ensure that that doesn't reach any sort of success, right? Like, what it means is it's the same tools that are required. It is the same resilience and grit. Maybe in the cases of females, more resilience and grit is required because you just face a lot more day-to-day challenges. Like, if you're a male going to open a bank account for a company, the questions asked by the account opening officer might be very different. And I don't want to spell out those questions, but they're going to be of the nature of, like, why are you doing this? Or after all, whereas for a male, it might be, hey, okay, how much money can the bank make off of this account that is coming in, right? And I think that those are the kind of everyday behaviors that we need to be cognizant about. We need to change and maybe set certain incentives. So, for example, if a husband is asking how can he encourage his wife to start a business, it's by maybe taking care of some of the things that he would expect that wife to still take care of after she's done with her startup. Start very simply from there. It all builds to give that confidence, and when that comes together in an articulate way, then it doesn't matter what stage of the business it is. There might be interest, because we're looking to at talented people building exceptional companies, and that doesn't have to have a gender lens.
Let me ask you something. What you are saying is actually that a marriage or a family unit is actually a partnership for the woman or the man when they go and start up a business. If you have a young woman or a young man sitting in front of you, let's check your bias also for all four of you. What is that one question you are most eager to find out about sustainability of business? How would you frame the question that you are trying to get the answer to as to how supportive their family would be? Is that a question you would ask the man and the woman? Or would you, right now, honestly speaking, ask it only to the woman?
Can I
Well,
jump?
I can try take the question first. I think at least that's what I consciously try to do. I mean, I'm not looking at candidates sitting across the table from an investment perspective. I'm looking at them usually from a perspective of hiring them in our team. So at that stage, my typical line of questioning or my conscious effort is that I don't frame during a conversation more of a gender from a him or a her perspective. So I try and keep my conversations very neutral around a person. So even if something has to be said, I would say, so if you are as a person would be required to do this, if you are to do this, if you are in this organization, or if you are in this role, this is what you would be required to do as a person kind of a conversation. So I try to make it a very general, neutral, gender neutral conversation. And so that helps me also focus. And that also hopefully, especially when you're talking to a young girl who is very conscious of these kind of things and who's more aware of all these issues around gender. And I've seen it many a times that they respect that fact and they recognize that fact, that they are being treated as a person, not as a female. And hence they are not being asked after questions like, will you be around a year from now or not? Because again, when I hire a man, there is no guarantee that that man will be around with me for the next 12 months, 18 months, 24 months. And they may leave for different reasons, but they do leave as well. So just because people may have different reasons, I think those are unfair questions to ask. And that's at least how we try deliberately, at least me and my colleagues and my teams, we try to frame our conversations in that manner.
Aisha, you wanted to say something?
Yeah, I just wanted to add to that because, even while we can check our implicit biases and try to as much as we can, let's be super clear on the fact that the world is very different for women than it is for men. And I'll give you an example of one of our companies. It's an agri-processing company in Colombia, and they found out that women just don't sign up for their 3 shifts, and there's 1 shift that women just don't sign up for, and they just couldn't figure it out until they actually asked the women, and the women told them, that shift requires us to take public transportation late in the evening. We do not feel safe on the streets. Now, that's not something any man would really think twice about, but women in Pakistan, Colombia, Africa, in so many parts of the world, there's certain constraints on mobility. There are also certain constraints that come from the way our societies are structured. So to the extent that post-COVID, right, even though the rest of the world, the sector is bouncing back, it's very clear that the people who have lost employment and work disproportionately is women, and certainly minority women. So it's called a she session, apparently someone called it. So ignoring those or saying if we don't ask the question, it will go away is one step for sure, and trying to be gender neutral in the questions you ask. But I think being aware of it and proactively taking measures to overcome it is another one. So for example, in the agri-processing case, if you want women to show up for that shift, you need to provide them safe transport. And that's something you as an employer need to take on. If you want women to show up when they have children, let's not kid ourselves. I mean, it's usually women who end up taking time off to take care of their children. So let's at least provide them a creche on site, a support for figuring out childcare for both, for men and women, but disproportionately the burden falls on women. So we may or may not ask those questions explicitly, but when decisions are being made on hiring, on figuring out what job market fit, what fits with the applicant, those questions are swirling, and without articulating them and figuring out, well, what are the constraints? I think we need to be just super clear as employers as well and say, this matters to us. We're not in a perfect world. There are constraints that exist for women. Let's work on minimizing those constraints and let's talk about them as well. So I think we need to go a step further.
Right. I want to build on this and move the questions, move my next question to Jehanara. So Aisha, you say that, yes, you need to ask those questions, but for us to be able to ask those questions, you either need gender bias training or gender sensitivity training, or just have more women. So there's more diversity in the workplace, in senior management. Jehanara, in all the years that you've been working, that we've been working, we just haven't seen enough women in senior management positions. And when we do make it there, they are unable to sustain themselves. Let me just put a disclaimer here. Women in senior management positions across the world are very few in number. It's not specific to Pakistan, but the kind of opportunity that you obviously see in the country might give us a little bit more hope. I want to ask, why aren't we seeing more women in senior management positions?
Okay, Rabia, so there are multiple reasons. So this morning, I met a woman who is running a Pepsi bottling plant. And I was shocked. I said, really? You're running a Pepsi bottling plant? She said, yes, that's what I do for a living. And then she said, so she didn't believe in all this gender bias and all of that. She said, I don't believe in women empowerment. Why should I sort of differentiate between hiring a man or a woman? It should be just the best person for the job, which is true. So when I hire, I also hire the best person for the job. But then I don't have a bias on not hiring a woman, right? I look at the candidates, and my team does the same. They look at the candidates, they talk to them, they find out about their experience, they want to know what they know about the company to which they have applied, which is really amazing that many people who apply for jobs actually don't know what the company does. So I don't know why they're applying, or do they send their CVs for every job that is out there. So then we select the people that we believe will perform the best under the conditions in which we operate. So I don't know why there are not so many women leaders. One of the reasons may be because of lack of opportunity. So I know this young woman who worked for a tech company here in Pakistan, and she did very well. She was very capable. Her customers were very happy with her. And she expected that she would be promoted and she would be selected for opportunities that were made available outside of Pakistan. But when the time came, it was her male colleagues who got selected, even though they didn't work as hard, their customers were not as happy with them. And there was no reason except for the fact that they hung out with the CEO after work, and the women did not. So this woman, she left the job because she said, I don't understand how I will ever get to the top of the senior leadership in this company if this is the way they operate. Now, not all companies operate that way. I'm not saying that, but there are a lot of companies where this network of, this boys network, so to speak, gets a lot of people ahead, even though they are not that capable, right? And women find that no matter how much time and effort they put in, no matter how much revenue they might build for the company, or no matter how good they are for the firm for which they work, they just don't get into senior leadership. And so then they find companies where they feel they will, and they do. So this young woman actually left the country, went to another country, and now is one of the leaders in a company that she joined. But she says that if she had stayed here, she would not have been able to do it. Now, I don't agree with her. I'm sure there are companies here that would have provided those opportunities, but she didn't feel that that was possible. So that's one of, that's a story I personally know. Women are not made to feel comfortable in many situations because there are just not enough women in the senior roles. So when You know, when SECP says you must have at least one board member who's a woman on your board, on the board of public listed companies, that one woman feels uncomfortable unless a second woman joins, right? Because very often she's just there because she's a woman. And I don't want to be on the board of any company simply because I'm a woman. I want to be there because I'm considered capable and I'm going to contribute towards the growth of that company. I think women are very careful about these kind of opportunities. They want to be in places where they will contribute, where they will create an impact, and where they are not just there because they're the token woman. We need to make sure there are more women in leadership simply because that will create more opportunities for other women to join. Yes, there are men who are champions for women's rights and women's growth and all of that, but still, we need to have many more women join their ranks so that there is a comfort level there where women feel that they want to be part of that company and part of that leadership in order to, you know, to grow. And I feel that's something that only if we have specific programs where we create those opportunities, it's not going to happen. Because, you know, whether in Pakistan or elsewhere, it's not happening fast enough. We see more women. We see about maybe 18 to 20% women in the tech sector right now. That is really not good enough. And this is true in the US as well. The number of women in tech companies is pathetic. We all need to work hard, not just to increase the number of women in tech, but the number of women in leadership roles across all professions. And that's what Katalyst Labs aims to do. We are not going to restrict ourselves to just women in tech, but leaders across all verticals.
Can you, thanks Jehan for that. Dr. Aisha, what about fellowship programs? Do you think fellowship programs के तहत मुमकिन है कि और ख़वातीन जो है बिजनेस को सही तरीके से समझ सके, इकोसिस्टम को और बेहतर समझ सके, ताकि वो बिजनेसेस में ना सिर्फ घुसे बल्कि उसको एक सस्टेनेबल अंदाज में चला सके? Do you think it'll make a difference?
Yeah, and look, I'm somewhat biased because Acumen runs a fellowship program as well, but I'll pull that out of it. देखें, एक जो चीज जो सब लोग कह रहे हैं, that being an entrepreneur is not an easy thing. It's a long slog. And, you know, the person who asked earlier, what should your family do? It's also, as Rabeel said, really just know that there's sharp ups and downs in the times that you're working. It's unpredictable. So in addition to the practical, technical things that a fellowship program enables you to get, in addition to that, you get a cohort with you. And there's something really beautiful and empowering about having a cohort from which you can not only draw insights, but you can share the issues that you have, the journey that you're on, the problems, the obstacles. And so that camaraderie, I think, from what we've seen over 8 years of doing this, it's actually the fellows amongst each other. You know, the mentorship is on one side, it's critical, the capital, the technical skills, but it's just learning from each other, being able to share parts of your journey, being able to, in a way, crowdsource for solutions that makes the difference often between people who quit and those who stick in there and play the game. And which sort of goes back to your point of why don't we see enough women in senior roles? I mean, part of it is that when you get them in, there's often enough parity. So when you look at the MT program or management trainees in banks and other organizations, there is. But as you keep going up that funnel, it's that stickiness that remains hard to maintain because the on-ramp is very difficult. And the single most important indicator here, which is not to discourage childbearing, I have 2 kids myself and I adore them, but the single most significant indicator that predicts women not being part of top management and leadership is having a child. It really sort of throws you off in most countries, certainly in Pakistan. So having access to that peer group allows you to have a set of peers with you through that fellowship who will hold your hand potentially through what might be challenging periods and keep you on that track. And I think it's hugely important. So I could not be more convinced of that.
Right. And you know, it's interesting you say that because, and Rabeel, the next question is coming to you. आयशा ने बात की peer group के बारे में, तो sorry cohorts के बारे में और peer groups के बारे में, लेकिन how important is networking for you to as a startup business to really kind of be seen by the right people, and also then learn from them, and then also stand out. How important is the networking aspect when looking for funding?
So I'll answer this question, and then I want to go back to what Aisha mentioned, because I think that's a very, very good point, and worth emphasizing again. The short answer is it's all about ultimately networking, because it's all about people. It's people making great businesses. It's people who are hopefully supporting, mentoring, and giving capital to other people. We ourselves are getting that capital from other people who are taking a call on us, being able to then support. So you can never be too networked. There's no such thing. In fact, even inside businesses, we're looking for network effects. Anything that has a network effect, which allows the business to grow or perpetuate itself, is brilliant. That's what we're also looking for. And I think what often gets confused is that there's the notion of networking is that you have to look a certain way, and for a certain defined period, go to a certain gathering, and that's networking. Maybe this is controversial. I think that's like anti-networking, right? Because the only ones that you will remember are the ones that are not acting that way, because you want to be able to get to know people, get to interact with them, know how they're going to be under pressure, how they're going to be when things are good. And that's what is being assessed all the time. It's not part of any one particular pitch deck, etc. And I think that links a little bit to the challenge that we've been talking about, which is why are women, for example, particularly in Pakistan, not so many women in leadership positions, because the saying goes, it takes a village, right? To bring a child up, or it takes a village to build a company. And the difference between a Silicon Valley and Pakistan is that there's such a support infrastructure now in place that is made up of people, where if, let's say, someone was super capable and is female, but has to maybe deal with some of the realities of life, such as having a child, it doesn't mean that it all kind of falls through, right? Like in Pakistan, unfortunately, because there's so many roles that have to be played, and you don't have that support infrastructure, whether you talk about the ecosystem or even in some cases family, that the assumption is that somehow this superwoman needs to have more than 24 hours in a day, because none of the other things are being taken off the plate. And I think that's what becomes a challenge, that a male compatriot has that full time, has the flexibility to go network, to be able to demonstrate why there's nothing that is more important to them. But for being more responsible, unfortunately, women have to pay this price. And it's almost like they have to decide then, okay, what do we choose? Whereas the decision is not always the case, or the assumption is that the male gets to choose the work as a priority. I'm not saying we don't have, or I myself have not had that inherent bias. We all started from a place where we could improve, and we still can. But being conscious about it, as Aisha said, Jehan also said, and then putting in place incentives that drive behavior towards it. I think that's very important. It's not just that, okay, you're on a panel, you heard this.
As Rabeel or
Chalo, we'll continue. We have about, I think, 9 minutes left for this session, unless you want to.
So Rabia, I just wanted to agree with what Aisha said, and this is the same for all entrepreneurs. We found that the cohort actually allows them to get to know each other, to be each other's part of each other's support network, to be able to figure out what they should be doing next. If one of them has made a mistake, the other one might have gone through a similar exercise. That bonding that exists actually helps them. And so I think fellowship programs, whether it's Acumen, I've seen so many Acumen fellows now who have actually gone on to do amazing things. And I think these fellowship programs actually brings like-minded people together, people who actually may have really amazing ideas otherwise in different areas, but they are so smart, so talented, so critically, needing to do something that will change society. And then when you bring them together, you will feel that there is an impact that you couldn't have otherwise seen coming. So I think fellowship programs are really amazing. And that's why I'm hoping for great things to happen from this fellowship program as well. Have you followed this, Rabia?
No, I'm very much. Can you hear me?
Abrar wants to say something, I think.
Yeah, Rabia, so I would just like to add on to that. I think from what Aisha was saying, what Jehan was saying, yes, there are challenges. Nobody can deny that. But I think it's equally important to see that there are women who overcome those challenges, and there are a lot of those. And those are the stories being worth being told of. Those are the stories being more put out there. And those are the kind of women and women like them who need to be encouraged more. And that's where I think we are very excited with this partnership with Catalyst Lab, because we hope, we don't expect to bring about a step change, but definitely incremental change is something that we hope to bring about. And then we do expect that in this partnership, through this partnership, let's hope a few years down the road, we have quite a few women-led ventures that have scaled up, and we have a lot more women leaders out there. We can put out example who started small, who grew up, and who were persistent enough, and who can become those kind of elements which people can look up to, learn from, and try to emulate.
All right, I have one question that's come in. Just a reminder, we only have about 5 more minutes, and I do want to do a round where I ask all of you for closing remarks, so we'll keep that aside. But Ali Raza has written in, what could be some of the best startup business ideas for a woman, particularly a housewife, other than these: clothing and apparel, food and drinks, digital agency, online teaching? What can be some other ideas that might be exciting for you as venture capitalists or investors?
So I think the first thing I do want to highlight is, I don't think that's the right question to ask. We've just been talking about that. Why should there be a difference in the type of business that can be set up? And why think of it as a housewife or a house husband or no, that's exactly what we're talking about. If it's a good, interesting space, if you have talent, grit, resilience, and are willing to cut it out for a long time, come talk to us. That's the requirement. It's not that you have a certain gender or you already have a certain label, because the only label we'd want you to have is like of that startup founder who's living and breathing it. I think, so I don't know if there's anything I'd want to add other than that maybe just think of the question differently.
Totally agree.
Rabeel, you've made up so well for your previous comment about, men and women, which got me giggling. But Aisha, sorry, please go ahead.
No, I was just saying I agree with Rabeel. I think he said exactly the right thing. Let's look for great ideas and let's enable women to follow through with them as well.
So before I go for closing remarks from each of you, which do you give more credence to, the idea and the business plan or the entrepreneur? Aisha, let's start with you.
It has to be both. I mean, ultimately, I actually would give more weightage to the entrepreneur because I'm an early stage funder. And so at that stage, the grit and character of the entrepreneur is, I would say, it's 70% of what you look at. So definitely that.
Abrar Sahab, since you are not an early stage investor, what do you look at and give more credence to?
Well, I guess in our case, it comes down to obviously some form of credibility, some form of traction of the idea. And having said that, there would be opportunities that we would be looking at. where you may not have had attraction, you may not have had a long track record, but the idea just might be so brilliant and that might be addressing our particular pain point. And if we see there is something like that, we'll definitely be looking at that.
All right, Jahanara and then Rabeel. Which do you give more credence to?
I would always give credence to the person, because idea can change. You know, if it doesn't work, if you go out and customers don't validate what you're working on, you can always pivot, you can always come up with another idea. But the grit and the determination of the person and his or her ability to take a new idea forward, I think there's no sort of replacement for that.
Rabeel, before I come to you, just JJ has also written in that a comment that a housewife should open school for educating the husbands in opening their minds. So I just thought I'd put that out there before coming back to you.
No, that one works. I think that's a backable idea. That might also scale very quickly. I think we'll have 50% of Pakistan's population signing up to that. but I think I cannot add more emphasis to what's been said by the three other panelists in terms of ultimately it's people. The greatest of business plans, the greatest of ideas with a lot of funding come falling to the ground in the hands of the wrong people. And by wrong people, meaning that just don't have their alignment or that are not doing it for the right reason. So what we have to do is we have to, like, given what our own respective mandates are, we need to be backing people because it's scarce resource. And you need to be making choices within them that are going after also interesting large spaces with scalable models. But if the people are not backable, you're not getting anywhere. I think it's as simple as that. So when we're making an assessment, Aisha mentioned 70%. Ultimately, in a way or the other, it comes down to a binary factor, whether you're going to back certain people or not. So it goes almost to 100% consideration in that case, but it is definitely the individuals involved.
These actually do kind of constitute closing remarks, but I still want to give each panelist just a quick 10 seconds because we are kind of running out of time. What is that one piece of advice that you can give to a young woman or to a female entrepreneur or a startup who's thinking of reaching out for investments, scaling up, stuck in a problem? What's one piece of advice that you would share with them? Dr. Aisha, sorry.
Yeah, and I was saying, since everybody was kind of probably thinking, so I would just go out and say, stop thinking, just go out and start doing something. The worst thing that can happen is you'll fail. So what? Try again.
Fair enough. Aisha?
Yeah, on that same theme, I will echo a little bit of what Rabeel started off with. Things are better now than they've ever been. There's so much opportunity, and with technology as an enabling factor, this is the time to jump in and just go for everything. So go for everything, and you know, leave the fear behind. That's the biggest thing to conquer, really, our own fears and apprehensions that hold us back.
Yeah, you are your worst enemy if you ever were. So Rabeel and then Jehan.
Yeah, I just want to echo what's being said. And I think female entrepreneurs can think of it another way as well. A lot of what was spoken today, and there's data out there to suggest that very few females are getting to those roles or are getting funded, etc. They should think of it that how, if they're really out there to get it, they're going to stand out. And if you're standing out in a pool, it makes you noticeable to investors. If you're truly building something and are able to demonstrate that grit, think of it from that perspective that we are looking at excuses to actually have more female-founded businesses in our portfolio. We, in fact, even get incentives from our investors to do that. So in a way, we're looking to make our job easier, but it's not an easy job because there's a lot of inherent issues that need to be addressed. But if you're out there and you are one of those people that just because of what is the noise around you might have kept you from trying or believing in yourself, just forget about all of that. make yourself stand out, because just by persisting and fighting, you are going to stand out, because a lot just choose to not take up that fight.
Thanks, Rabeel and Jehan.
So in addition to all the great things that the other three panelists have said, I think I would suggest that you go talk to someone, because, you know, somebody out there amongst your friends, amongst your mentors, amongst the investors has already looked at some of the things that are scaring you, right? And people are willing to help if you just let them. So I know all of us cannot answer all the questions that are put to us on a daily basis. I know I get so many questions on WhatsApp and Facebook and by email, many of which I cannot attend to simply because there isn't enough time, but many I do address. So if you know someone within the ecosystem, people either who are entrepreneurs or people who are investors or people you know to be mentors, go up to one of them and talk to them. You know, just having a conversation with somebody allows you to actually think through what it is that's bothering you about not starting a business, or about whether you're a woman or a man, whether it is something that really should be holding you back, or is it just, you know, is it just a lack of confidence? So I think, and then even if it's an idea, unless you discuss it with someone, I know a lot of young people say, oh, if I discuss my idea, it'll be stolen. No, no, no. You know, it will not be stolen. Ask anybody. I mean, ask Rabeel, Aisha, Abrar. Ideas cannot be stolen. Only you can implement and execute an idea the way you know how. So, I mean, no idea is truly unique. It's been done somewhere in the world or by somebody. You will put a new twist on it and you will be able to do it differently. So go and talk about it. When you talk about it to someone else, you will get feedback. Don't talk to your mother or your siblings or, you know, anybody very close to you who doesn't want to break your heart and say that's a stupid idea, because, you know, no ideas are stupid. You need to talk to someone who will give you good feedback, who can tell you, okay, I'm looking at this, I can pick holes here, here, and here, but this I think would work. And then you do exactly what your heart tells you, but go talk to someone about it. I think that's always such a great idea. And that's why there's a question, I think, on one of the, one of the questions Zartaj, I think, has asked, is Catalyst Labs going to, get into one-on-one mentoring? Absolutely, that's the whole idea, because every person's problem is very different. So the whole idea is to dig deep, find out what the problem is and identify it, and then try and solve it and create the kind of environment for you that will allow you to grow your company, your business, or you as an individual. So definitely one-on-one mentoring is what we're looking at.
Thanks, Jahanara. And before I turn it over to Akash, just a few words from me. I was looking up some stats now. I've been covering the local industry for, I think, the past 23 years or so. And, I've watched people like Jahanara come up. And when you're talking about networking and talking and all the advice cumulatively that all the panelists talk about, all you need to do is, like Abrar Saab, make up your mind and just take that one step forward. If you look at stats, about 49.2% of Pakistan's population is women. Yet, women only make up a meager 20.5% of the workforce, and even less than that when we talk about founders of businesses that are actually sustained over the course of 5 years. आपको ये नहीं पता कि जब आप तयन कर लें, जब आप तय कर लें कि आपने एक बिजनेस आइडिया को शुरू करना है, how long that will last. You never know. If you're one of those people who keep sitting on and looking at a screen and saying, these are the same faces that I see, the only person who can change it is you. Reach out to one of these people, go through funds like Acumen, reach out to people like Rabeel, learn from people like Abrar, and interact and engage as much as you can with people and platforms, people like Jahanara and platforms like Catalyst Lab. With that, my name is Rabia Garib. I'm the chief rapper of TalkieTV.com, and over to you, Akash.
Great. Thank you so much, Rabia, for moderating this wonderful session. Thank you once again to all the panelists. It was really a wonderful discussion. The time passed by really quickly. We had a lot of engagement, both on Zoom and on Facebook. We were able to answer most questions, but some of them, if there's still some questions you have, especially about our programs, about what Catalyst Labs does, email us on info@catalystlabs.pk. And thank you once again for everyone joining us, and take care. Bye-bye.
Thank you, everyone, for joining,
you.
for taking the time. See you again
Thank
soon.
you, Aisha,
Bye.
Abrar,
Thank you.
Rabeel, and
Good seeing
Jehan.
you
Thank
all.
you.
Bye-bye.
Thank
Take
you.
care.
Bye.